Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. About 2 years ago, my BFF slept with the guy I was dating at the time. What she did was definitely not excusable by any means, but at that time, I stepped back to take a look at the situation and decided what the best course of action would be for me as a person. I had known my BFF for almost 14 years. We grew up together and she was more than a sister to me. She had become a part of my family and my parents even treated her like a second child. On the other hand, I dated the guy only for a week before I found out they slept together. I also had to consider the fact that it was BFF who was guilt-ridden, who came clean to me instead of hiding the truth. That isn't to say I wasn't hurt or angry with her. I didn't talk to her for an entire week, and only after I saw how vast the consequences of cutting her off from my life would be that I decided to step back and let it slide. For starters, if that guy slept with her after a week of dating me, it was a good riddance for me because no one wants someone unfaithful. Secondly, my BFF was intertwined with my family to a degree where cutting her off would mean I'll have to explain to my parents sooner or later what happened. Although I knew without a doubt they would have taken my side, I also knew they'll be deeply hurt. For me, the relationship wasn't anything serious, and I was mad and sad that she didn't tell me she was interested in him. But my parents would feel more betrayed, as they treated her like their own daughter. To some level, it would mean they'd stop trusting other people, and I didn't want them to go through that. So instead of completely cutting her off of my life, I decided to slowly grow apart. With both our jobs and adult lives, it was already hard for us to see each other every day. All I had to do was stop taking her calls or replying to every single text she sent me. From 1 week to 1 month, which eventually turned into 2 or 3 months that went by without us talking. It had been 3 months since we met when she called me and asked if we could meet up for drinks. At first, I made the same old excuse of being busy with work and how I had to clock in overtime hours. But she forced me to come, saying it was something really important and she needs me now more than ever. My curiosity got the better of me and I went there to see what it was. Turns out she wants to celebrate her engagement and asked me to be her maid of honor. I couldn't believe this woman had the audacity to ask me to be her maid of honor when there was nothing honorable about the start of her relationship. I wanted to tell it to her face, but instead, I saw it as an opportunity when she took out a list of things she'd need me to do as her bridesmaid. There were a few things she had jotted down, including throwing a bachelorette party, arranging wedding gifts for the guests, and wedding speech listed in block letters. She told me how I'm the only one who has witnessed all the ups and downs of her life from a front row seat, and there couldn't be a better person to have this honor. She said she trusts me to do this right. I was actually offended that she still hasn't got it through her head that we're no longer so close, and it's by choice. She thinks just because I talked to her or let it slide what she did to me, it's okay for her to ask me to literally arrange the whole wedding so she could get married to the guy who cheated on me. No way could I let this one slide. She didn't respect my feelings at all, and there was no need for me to respect hers anymore. So when I finally got down to cracking the things on that list, I purposely messed up a few of those. For her bachelorette party, I organized the whole thing at a cafe instead of any wine bar or pub, and gave the wrong name to the bakery while ordering the cake. When the cake was delivered with my name on it, I told her it must have been a mistake I made and apologized by making a joke that she shouldn't mind it much, as she's used to taking my things. I smudged out the name part from the cake to make it better, but it was clear that her mood was ruined. Then, on the wedding day, when it was time for her entry, she asked me to get the band to play It's You, but instead I got them to play Blank Space, as she had already walked down the aisle and there was no saving that moment. Then, during the wedding speech, I made sure to mention how they met and thank myself for bringing them together. I talked about how the guy cheating on me and my BFF betraying my trust was the start of their relationship. It was a really embarrassing moment, and she started crying by the time I was done. She got up and left her own wedding for a minute, and everyone there was mad at me. My parents were also invited, and they were conflicted between processing the truth and hating the way I took my revenge. My mom dragged me away from the stage and told me to go back to my home and think about the kind of person I became that day. She said she always taught me to be better than others, and I proved her wrong by pulling something like this. She was disappointed, and the same went for my father. If my BFF had left the issue in the past and hadn't asked me to be the maid of honor, I wouldn't have felt the need to do this. But completely disregarding how I felt was a step too far, and I had to teach her how it felt. Am I the a-hole for doing this to her? Can you believe that my parents are actually mad at me? I told them exactly what had happened 2 years ago and how my friend only apologized after because she couldn't live with the guilt of betraying me. It was her fault from the beginning, and I was the one who didn't turn that whole thing into a big mess involving everyone. I considered everyone's situation and quietly moved on with my life. I had no obligation to do so. I could have dragged her through the mud if I wanted to, but I didn't set my mind on revenge. And now my parents are mad and disappointed at the person I've become. They are saying that they thought they raised a better human, and if I really hurt over what happened, then Kay should have ended things right then and there. According to them, my letting go of that matter has settled it once and for all, and I shouldn't have held a grudge. No matter how hard I tried to tell my mom that my friend was the one who asked me to my face to arrange her whole wedding without considering what that would mean for me, she still wouldn't understand where I'm coming from. She finally asked me to apologize for what I did and end it once and for all. And that's what made me even more angry, because why should I apologize? Even if I went a little overboard, it was just something she deserved, and we're even now. I swear, if not for living separately from them, I would have lost my mind by now. So my ex-BFF called me today. I didn't think she had it in her to contact me ever again. I purposely drifted apart from her and created a huge distance, but that wasn't big enough of a hint for her to know that I don't want to be in her life. So I even ruined her wedding to send a clear sign that I'm obviously not past her betraying me and don't want her to be in my life. If anything, that should have sent a clear message of where we stand. But apparently that was not enough, because after a month of peace, she started calling me again. I didn't pick up her calls, hoping to God that she'd just text me whatever it was about, but she's tenacious this time. I finally blocked her yesterday after being fed up, and today I found her waiting for me at my office. I had to give props to her for having the nerve, because if it was me, I would have never seen my face ever again. I asked her what she wants, and she told me she just wants to talk. I told her there's nothing to talk about, and there's no point in continuing to pretend we are friends, so we should be civil and go away. We're both adults, and fighting like children for things that we both know are lost is pathetic. But she only said that I should apologize and think about what I really am upset about if I want to move on. Her words kept annoying me, because now she was trying to act all omniscient. It's been a few months since I updated here. To be honest, I was so engrossed in my anger that I became blindsided. It was frustrating that my mom treated me like a shit for what I did, and everyone kept blaming me when I was the one who was wronged first. So I distanced myself from everyone. I didn't even talk to my family. That's when I realized that I actually went overboard with my revenge. When I was all alone, I thought about how I could have told her no, but instead, I acted immaturely. A lot of you did say I was the a hole, but I ignored those comments thinking people on the internet hate everything. Anyway, after I realized I was in the wrong, I called my mom and apologized to her, and she actually told me to talk to my friend and see where we stand. So I followed her advice and called her. I didn't think she'd pick up after I told her to get lost the day she came to my office. I was wrong again because she did pick up. I asked her if we could meet and talk, and she agreed instantly. After we talked about what happened, I apologized to her for ruining her wedding, and she accepted her fault for being inconsiderate. It was clear to both of us that there's no way we can ever go back to being friends, and the best we can do is part on a good note. So that's what we did, and that actually brought some peace in my life. I can't say I have forgiven her husband, but it's a start that I can reminisce about our teenage years without getting angry or upset. YTA, I was with you until you said you saw her request as an opportunity. I'm all for revenge, but this was uncalled for. You pretended to forgive her only to go back and ruin her day. Sorry, but you are the a-hole. YTA, what she did was wrong, and you should have actually got back at her at that time instead of letting her believe you were fine. Manipulating is worse, and that makes you an a-hole here. My boyfriend, who I've been dating for 3 years and lived with for a year, has a 9-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. I have a 5-year-old daughter from a previous relationship also. My boyfriend has had to go overseas to work for 2 months, so I'm taking this time to go see my brother who moved to America, Florida to be exact, to live with his wife, and I'm taking my daughter with me, and he has suggested we take my daughter and his 2 sons to Disney World while we're staying. I have my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend on social media strictly so we can contact each other in emergencies, on top of having phone numbers, which is how she saw me posting about the upcoming trip. The next day, I got a series of messages from her asking why I hadn't invited her daughter to go too, and I told her this wasn't a family trip with my boyfriend. If it was, we'd of course have taken his daughter too, but this was me just visiting my own family. She seems to think her daughter should come along despite this, as the girl's parents are dating, and it would cause hurt feelings, and like one is like more if both don't get to go on this holiday. She even implied her older daughter would get more enjoyment out of the trip than my daughter. When I told her she was being ridiculous and I am not comfortable with taking her daughter without my boyfriend, she told me I was horrible and that I was going to make things tough between the girls in the long term and make her daughter feel unloved. I like my boyfriend's daughter a lot. She's a sweet kid, but I'm not her stepmother yet, so I'm her dad's girlfriend, and this is me visiting my own family, which will just happen to include a Disney trip. But I'm feeling guilty from her messages and her subtle posts about how having blended families are so hard when the other person isn't making any effort. Is it really wrong of me to say no? NTA, is her mother going to pay for her to go to Disney? That is a pretty expensive destination. Is mom going to pay to get her daughter to Florida, or does she expect you to take on the financial responsibility as well? As the well-being of a child, you are neither blood nor legally related to. I hope you let your boyfriend know how his ex is behaving and that boyfriend is backing you up. NTA, taking your own kid overseas without the other parent can be a pain sometimes, let alone someone else's. I'm not even talking about caring for the kid. I mean, extra paperwork, getting things notarized, extra questions, and making sure you have something ready in hand when you walk in the airport. And don't let an accident happen. Something small that might only require one stitch at the hospital will turn into a real nightmare. What kind of parent would send their child to another country with a non parent is the real question. NTA, I would not feel comfortable transporting someone else's kids over state lines without either of their parents present. What if one is sick, injured? You have no standing to treat them. To me, the possible kidnapping charge, transporting a minor across state lines, etc., legal issues trump the ex's desire to have you fund her kid's dream vacation. Okay, you're in another country? Hell no, that is rife with issues. No one can get there quickly in a medical emergency if consent is needed, etc. No way. Plus, your reward would likely be a lot of passive-aggressive comments about all the ways you unjustly put your daughter first. Just nope. So I, 22 female, work at an animal shelter. I started working part-time at the adoption department. That meant I was handling animals for people who wanted to adopt them. After a while of working there, a full-time position opened for our surrender department. After talking with my boss, I was able to move departments. So now I have different responsibilities. I don't handle the people as much as I do the animals. I take them in, give them vaccinations, make sure they're all healthy and doing okay before they go on the floor for people to look at. It really is the best job I've ever had. So our main girl in this story was just recently hired about a month ago. We'll call her Sadie, 18, female. Now, this was her first job, and I understand how totally nerve-wracking it is. Especially a job like this, there's a lot to learn and it's really easy to make mistakes. I made sure to let them know that I'm always available to lend a hand or answer any questions, which everyone always made use of. Friday night, my boss called me to tell me that one of the girls that was supposed to work Saturday suddenly quit. So I would have to be in adoptions all day. Now, I go into work at 8 while Sadie and our other coworker, Lana, 28 female, come in at 9:30. Once they came in, they started doing the normal setup before we officially opened at 10. A lot of things happened that day that I believed led to her being fired, but I'll tell you one I think sealed the deal. We had a man come in to look at one of our dogs he wanted to adopt. So I make a copy of his ID and Lana goes to grab the dog so they can spend some time together. After she comes back, Sadie begins to say inappropriate things. She said that the man looked like a racist and it wouldn't surprise her if he was a sex offender. I was so shocked by what she said, I stopped moving to try and process the moment. Lana starts laughing and the two continue to talk about him. I look at them and tell them that is inappropriate and they need to stop talking. They just rolled their eyes and said, "Yes, Mom," but they still continue to talk about him. After a while of him spending time with the dog, he came back out and said he would have to think about if this dog was for him or not. After a few more minutes of talking, he said goodbye and turned to leave. Sadie turns around to Lana and they again start laughing. This time, Sadie said he may be a child molester. Mind you, he hadn't fully left the building yet. After he had, Lana took the copy of his ID and took it back to her desk and began to look him up on Google to see if she could find out anything bad about him. I stood up and left the room, immediately calling the shelter manager to let her know what was going on. I had to write out an official statement about everything that happened that day. Our executive director went through the cameras and confirmed everything that happened, and she was fired today. Today, I overheard Lana say I was a jerk for getting her fired when it was just a joke. So, AITA? NTA. Saying someone looks like a sex offender isn't a joke. It isn't anything to laugh about, and there's nothing funny about it. Neither is invading someone's privacy by using their identification required by your job to look up information about them for your own entertainment. She deserved to be fired. NTA. Jokes are supposed to be funny, and this wasn't. Maybe if Sadie had left it at the comments and not looked him up on Google, I'd feel a little differently, but she didn't. It's kind of a breach of privacy to have taken his ID and used it to research him. Sadie needs to grow up and realize that a person's outward appearances tell you very little about them. Hopefully, she has learned her lesson. OP, good on you for taking this seriously and letting your supervisor know. NTA, and you need to report Lana again now for talking about you behind your back to other people. Every job has certain expectations of professionalism, and they obviously violated those expectations. What they did was disgusting. It wasn't a joke. And as someone who is a survivor, I can promise it is never a joking matter. It is never funny.